It's time to have your say. Welcome to the Q&A. AskSCW back once again answering your questions in the wrestling community. There's some fantastic questions on the way this week, and I'm going to get started straight after this. So this week then we've got questions on WWE, NXT, AEW, Impact Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling on the way for you, and much more. Also topics including all the rumours going in for potentially what will be happening at SummerSlam this year. Will the Usos win the SmackDown Tag Team Championships? I'm going to kick things off potentially with a new partnership. That's right, you know what we're talking about. Move over Forbidden Door, WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling. Could it be happening? Let's talk about it now with our first question this week, and it comes from WrestleRant13 asking my thoughts on the WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling partnership rumours. Well, who saw this one coming a couple of days ago? WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling in talks to have the partnership. Of course, I think the first reaction and thoughts of it would be the current relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling, AEW and Impact, the forbidden door, if you want. That certainly would actually slam it quite firmly shut. Now, I do realise at the moment that instead of them actually having, gang warfare and company versus company invasions, it's more been like occasional talent exchange. I mean, Kenta's appeared on Dynamite. They get the use of John Moxley as the IWGP United States heavyweight champion as well. But that was kind of always in Moxley's deal once he signed with AEW that he could do that. And as well with the Impact stuff as well, they've had El Phantasmo from New Japan Pro Wrestling, Finn Juice recently as well. So a lot of that would be immediately stopped because New Japan and WWE would be an exclusive deal if that was to happen. Now, I know a lot of people would turn around and say that they're not excited about it. I've seen a lot of backlash with it on Twitter. I must admit, I've started thinking about some of the dream matches that we could see, which I'll be talking more in the next question about. And you start thinking, I'd quite like to see that. Imagine the idea of like Okada at WrestleMania, or potentially some top WWE superstar like I don't know, Cesaro perhaps, or Seth Rollins over from SmackDown to go over to New Japan and appear on Wrestle Kingdom. Maybe unutilized talent like Chad Gable going into New Japan would be treated so much better as well. So there are sort of ideas of it which seem really exciting, but there are parts of me that feels very skeptical of the deal because, of course, once you go into that partnership, I can't see WWE putting another talent or another company over. We've only got to look as far as the invasion angle, which they did with WCW back in the day. Even though they purchased WCW, there was no way that WCW could be, bigger than WWE, or it would actually damage Vince if he was to book it that way. He couldn't help himself. WCW, ECW, and that invasion had to be buried by WWE. So I just think when it comes to that sort of head-to-head company collision, that wouldn't work very well. And I do fear how certain stars, if New Japan were to come over to WWE, how they would be booked. I mean, could you imagine one of the top New Japan stars chasing the 24/7 championship, or Okada losing on 5 minutes on Raw? It just doesn't happen. It would ruin the moment. So if it was to be done, and it was to happen, it would need to be done correctly for me. It would have to be occasional, not all the time, and it have to be something that would benefit people, both sides. Maybe developmental talent, that would be a good way of doing it. Something that you kind of want to get to that next level, not quite got that exposure yet, that they're ready for the spotlight. From WWE, someone like from NXT, you could send them over to New Japan, or perhaps even not a big star in NXT at that point, and someone that's not, this person needs to be called to the main roster. And same with New Japan, they've got all the young boys and stuff like that. That could work quite well in exchange as well, to try and get people experience, kind of like we saw back in the day with Impact. We saw Sonata, for example. Yes, we've seen some bad examples as well, Carter being badly booked in Impact, but still, those sort of relationships, that's where I think it could work. And some of the top stars on the big occasions, you're talking Royal Rumbles, you're talking WrestleManias, and you're talking Wrestle Kingdoms, those sort of places, I think it can work really, really well. And one thing that we just can't forget before coming in, I think Daniel Bryan would be a key to this as well, because I know Daniel Bryan probably wants to explore his options a little bit. I know WWE is desperate to keep him on the books and get him to re-sign with the company. If Daniel Bryan could do occasional appearances and do matches like that in New Japan, for example, be a part of the G1, I think that would be really exciting, and I think that would be a sort of thing that would probably sway superstars that perhaps are not getting exactly what they want in WWE. Know they have the chance to go over to, tour in Japan, have a chance to, have a bit of time over there and compete in New Japan Pro Wrestling would be really, really exciting. Perhaps know that they get there's more reason to stick around rather than saying if things aren't exactly how I want it in WWE, I have to leave and explore and go completely differently. So I think there's definitely some positives that can happen from it. I personally am still very skeptical that this will actually come to anything at this particular moment, so I'm definitely not getting carried away at this stage. But what I will say is that I think there's good and bad with both of this if it was to go through, but at this moment I'm willing to be a bit more patient and just see where it goes rather than just getting overly excited and getting ahead of myself. So for me right now, I would be surprised if it happens, but I think a good indication of whether it will head that direction if Jon Moxley loses the IWGP United States Championship, because he is signed to AEW, and I think that if he's to lose that championship and then you start seeing ties with AEW and New Japan sort of separate over the next coming months, then I think you've got a good idea that it's heading in that direction. And like I say, good and bad potentially on both sides of it. I'll wait and see how it will play out, and I can't help but think that one or two of those dream matches, hey, you get a chance to see those in wrestling, that's got to be a fun thing, right? And speaking of dream matches, our next question comes from Michael. If the New Japan Pro Wrestling and WWE Partnership rumours are true, what would be your dream matches that you would like to see? Great question, this one, and I could easily get very carried away here, but I'll try and keep it fairly brief. I mean, Roman Reigns versus Okada, I think that seems to be nailed in stone, wouldn't it? Literally the two biggest stars of the company. Two of like the faces as well for the companies for the long sort of term. I think like John Cena against like Tanahashi, I think would be quite a fun match to see. In tag team wrestling, it's got to be the Usos against the GOD. I think that would be fun to watch. I did see a lot of people on Twitter saying they'd love to see Seth Rollins against Jay White, and I do actually agree that would be a major dream match, something that I think a lot of people would like to see. But to give a couple of matches, I'd kind of break it down differently. I think Seth Rollins against Will Ospreay. Do you remember that Twitter spat they had a long time ago? You could play it into a storyline, could be quite fun to watch. And I mean, let's not forget as well with WWE, NXT comes with it as well. So for Jay White, I would go with Finn Balor. I mean, obviously you've got current Bullet Club against the history of the old Bullet Club as well. AJ Styles could even arguably be someone that could be fitted into that role to go against Jay White. But for me, I think Finn Balor would be probably a better fit for it. If Daniel Bryan was to re-sign with WWE, I'd like to see him against Zack Sabre Jr. I think that would be a technical masterclass. If you couldn't get Daniel Bryan in that role, why not Chad Gable, one of the best pure technical wrestlers in WWE? I think those two, especially in the New Japan environment, would have an epic encounter. And to give one more, I mean, of course, you've got those sort of high-flying, spectacle superstars. And Ricochet, I know he's got previous history being in New Japan Pro Wrestling, but I would love to see him against El Fantasma. I think that would be an epic encounter to see. But that's what I think. Let me know what you think now in the comments below. What dream matches would you like to see if WWE was to go head-to-head against New Japan Pro Wrestling? New Banco, the next questions now here on AskSCW. What are your thoughts on Franky Monet's debut on NXT this week? 5 female baby faces that Eva Marie might manage, and thoughts on WWE and New Japan Wrestling, obviously working together, which we talked about already, but will Stardom get involved? And that's a great point. We'll kick off with that one if you don't mind, just to close off the partnership chapter, because New Japan Pro Wrestling and Stardom do have the same owner. And one of the sad parts with obviously WWE and New Japan is that obviously New Japan, we don't see any women's matches, so it wouldn't really benefit the women's roster in any way. But if Stardom was brought into conversation, a whole female promotion in Japan that's massive on its own way, and it's groundbreaking, being its own promotion and being very successful as well doing so, that would be cool to see superstars from Stardom come over to face the women of WWE, and of course vice versa as well. I mean, particularly as well, like we say earlier on in the video, if we get a situation where some of those are in the more developing stages, if you want, at this particular time, I think that would be a real benefit. So yeah, I would hope that would be an arrangement that could be made later down the line if of course the WWE partnership and New Japan partnership actually does come to fruition. But we'll have to wait and see at this stage. But as for Franky Monet, let's be honest here, she looked like a star. She was someone that is, in my opinion, didn't need to go to NXT. She's ready for the main roster. You can see character-wise, in ring work, she's got experience on her side as well. There was something about her that just thought she's not going to be sitting sort of lower in the middle of the pecking order in NXT. She's going to be someone that's going to be shot straight towards the top, and I wouldn't be surprised if she was NXT Women's Champion before the end of the year. And as far as I'm concerned, as I've said already, I think she could have gone straight to Raw to be with her husband John Morrison, and they could have had a partnership like that, which would have, I think, would have benefited Morrison. Could have also benefited Franky Monet as well. But the thing is, at the same time, with Franky going straight to NXT, it gives her a chance to establish her name amongst the WWE audience. I mean, of course, a lot of people will be aware of her work from Impact Wrestling, from Lucha Underground, her time in Mexico. But for WWE, for just WWE strictly owned fans or NXT, we do have those people. It gives a chance for them to become familiar with her, and if she does get shot up to the main roster in, say, I don't know, 12 months from now, they'll be more familiar with her as well. Perhaps then she would have a chance of being even more successful. But she's definitely got all the tools. She ticks a lot of the boxes. I think Franky Monet is going to have a very successful spell in WWE and particularly in NXT. As for Eva Marie, you make a fantastic point in your question. Rumours are going around that Eva Marie, of course, will be coming in as a babyface with this role model character and giving back. And the idea of giving back is her not actually to compete in the ring. It's actually for her to be a manager. The evolution is to actually put her spin on these superstars and get them to the upper level. And of course, if they are to do that in WWE, she can't work with the top talent, because of the fact is, the idea, I guess, is that Eva Marie will still be the star here, and the idea is that her stardom, her perhaps popularity, if you look on social media places like Instagram and Twitter and places like that, will rub off onto the talents that she is with. And it's hard to think of 5 talents, but I think I've managed to cheat and think of 6, but mainly that's due to tag team wrestling, because I think that she could definitely help and benefit some of the tag teams on the main roster, and probably looking at NXT as well, if any of the call-ups were to come up and she was to benefit with those. So people I thought perhaps Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke, they've kind of almost gone a bit lost on the way they've been booked on Raw in recent months. They've kind of almost been heelish in their babyface antics as well, so they're meant to be faces. With Eva Marie as well, probably could be a good fit as a manager role that could help them get to the tag team championships. I think that could work quite nicely. Lana could be another one, because I mean, people have been quite critical of her work in the past, just like they've been with Eva Marie, but Lana for me is really improving. Every time she gets into a WWE ring now, always seems to be a much more improved performance than the last time. I think Lana's really going places, and if it's that babyface role, then that could kind of work. Looking to NXT, I think there are a couple of talents that could work there. I mean, one that I think I'm not connecting with is Mercedes Martinez. Now, I know she's kind of meant to be a heel, but it seems to be a bit back and forth when she had that program with Raquel Gonzalez of who was meant to be what role. And I do feel that, I don't know, there's just something with Mercedes Martinez that she's great in ring, she's got the tools, she's got the look of what would be a good menacing heel, but at the same time, there's something character-wise that I'm not connecting with, and maybe a manager is just what she needs. So, and there's always the fun part as well with the idea of Eva Marie as well, coming in as a babyface. A lot of people, perhaps not so much on her side, maybe WWE has done this on purpose, because then she will become the heel and make those babyfaces stronger babyfaces in the long term. Maybe that's something they could look to. But one other team that I could see that could benefit if you bring them up from NXT, like I say, not established stars, Kaden Carter and Casey Catanzaro, another tag team, would actually weaken the NXT women's tag team division, could strengthen the main roster one as well. So that could be a potential option there. But again, one of those, I probably need help in the comments below of good suggestions on this one, because I don't see people like Io Shirai or people like that who would benefit from having Eva Marie as their manager at this stage. Next question is coming off Instagram from Mike, Italian Haps Mike, and he has said to us, what do you think is the reason why WWE is holding SummerSlam on a Saturday this year? And do you think WWE will go full out with surprises and swerves and make SummerSlam a must-see pay-per-view? And question 2, as good as NXT has been, do you think that when crowds return, it will help make NXT better? And will we see TakeOver's return one night before a major pay-per-view? Now, I have to give a lot of credit for this information to Andrew Zarian, as well as WrestleVotes here for the information gathered for SummerSlam 2021. Now, the rumours are that the location will be in Las Vegas, Nevada, and according to sources, it is at the request of the venue that's why SummerSlam will be taking place on the Saturday rather than the Sunday. And of course, on the Saturday, it will be clashing on the same evening as the Manny Pacquiao boxing fight. So that is an interesting tactic from WWE, because you'd have thought they would have wanted to avoid other major pay-per-view sports going on at the same time. But WWE, I think for this, they're going to go all out to put it in Las Vegas, to give it that big spectacle that's going to be SummerSlam. I think with fans returning as well, they're going to want to give us something that's going to make people go to this. And of course, with lots of rumours that have been going around, some of the big matches, potentially John Cena returning to WWE to take on Roman Reigns at SummerSlam is definitely one big money marquee match. It's arguably one of the biggest matches that WWE can do at this stage. There are rumours as well as a guest host coming in also, with Cardi B being the rumoured name. Of course, her name was dropped on Legends Night on Raw at the start of this year. That led to a bit of a Twitter spurt with her and Lacey Evans, and Cardi B, I think, also saying that this wasn't the way she was meant to debut in WWE. We've seen the success that we had with Bad Bunny coming into WWE for a period of a couple of months earlier this year, so I think Cardi B would be, it's it's a big sort of main stage name that I think people would be very familiar with, and I think it would draw outside eyes into the product as well with interest. So yeah, I think WWE will go all out to make SummerSlam the biggest show of the summer. They usually do every year, but I think that with fans being back as well, I think they would go stronger and harder than ever, and I think they would give us potentially some of the biggest matches possible, and I think that they may not just stop with Roman Reigns versus John Cena, but I will dive further into that into the next question. But with NXT, very, very quickly, I have to say, yeah, I think fans will make a big difference, because NXT, it is a show that has some fans in there at the moment with the Capital Wrestling Center, but how it used to feel, NXT was its own special vibe, its own special atmosphere. The fans made NXT what it was. It was always a good show, it was always fun storytelling, stuff like that, but it was the people, it was the fans that made NXT what it was, and you can see with the ratings right now that it's lower. I think when fans can go to a big capacity, I think NXT gets that buzz back, that excitement back, that, you know, like I say, there are still very good shows of what we are getting now, but I think it will go up another level, and I think it will help the ratings a little bit, and if they can, you know, help build 1 or 2 stars further up, because they're currently in the transition period right now of making superstars into their main eventers that perhaps are not the ready-made ones they had before. We've had Finn Balor, we've had Johnny Gargano, now we're sort of pushing Karrion Kross and Kyle O'Reilly to that top end, so to get them there, it's going to need a bit of time to see it draw and develop as well, so they have to be patient with that. But when you say that we're going back with major pay-per-views the night before, I can see that happening. Yes, I think that'll be a logical thing for WWE to do. Of course, we have these tickets and these big packaging weekends and stuff like that usually combine NXT TakeOver with those major pay-per-views like WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam. So yeah, I can see that happening, and yeah, I look forward to when it can come back. Of course, as I'm going to say, as long as it can be done safely, I'm fully in favour. I cannot wait for fans to be back in attendance. Just a minor before I go to the next question, of course, seeing AEW with Dynamite this past week was a very special feeling, and I must admit the show for me was alright. It wasn't the strongest Dynamite I've ever seen, but it went up another level just purely seeing those fans, and that's what makes me really excited to see Double or Nothing this evening. A full house, like I said, if it's all safely done, everyone's tested and negative, and everyone can just have a good time and let loose, it's going to feel so normal, it's going to feel so nice, and yeah, it's going to be a real special feeling watching that pay-per-view on later today. Next question coming from Austin Whitley. Do you think we'll get Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley at SummerSlam? Well, if I was booking it, you most certainly would be. Yeah, that's a dream match I want to see. I think it'll be the right place and the right time. The championship on the line as well. While Lashley's stock is at its highest, I think is the best time to make this dream match happen. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't know what it is. We waited years for it. It's what Bobby Lashley came back to WWE for, and for some reason we've never had Lashley versus Lesnar, and I don't know what it'll do at the moment when WWE's plans are to bring Lesnar back. Perhaps it wouldn't be till maybe Royal Rumble, WrestleMania season next year when things are really, really back in full swing. But if WWE want to go all out for SummerSlam, I think this certainly will be a money match to do, because bringing Brock Lesnar back in is an attraction. It's a big match. It would definitely put Bobby Lashley over. If Lashley was the winner as well, we'd be coming out smelling of roses afterwards. So for me personally, I think this is a match I think needs to happen, but at this particular moment, I wouldn't predict that it definitely would happen. DWE for us now, Dan the Man Williams, of our next question. Do you think WWE could sell out a 65,000 seater stadium for SummerSlam, and do you think they won't be able to draw those numbers for a show that isn't a Royal Rumble or WrestleMania? Very good question, this one. I mean, when you look at it, of course, the Royal Rumble in recent years before the pandemic was in baseball stadiums, was around 40,000 people. WrestleMania, of course, before the pandemic is WrestleMania. It can probably sell out wherever it is in the world for however many seats are in attendance. SummerSlam, yeah, it's not a pay-per-view that's been in these stadium environments too often. Of course, I have to go throwback here and go back to 1992. Of course, SummerSlam in the United Kingdom at Wembley. 80,000 fans were in attendance for that. Now, that's possibly because it was overseas, but I imagine if this was pre-pandemic, I'm sure WWE would be able to sell it out. At this particular stage right now, I don't know how comfortable people would be being all in that environment, that many people in attendance, so that for me is questionable. But what I would say is, if WWE is to go all out, like we spoke about in previous questions there, the idea of John Cena versus Roman Reigns as, you know, your marquee main event. John Cena was the biggest star of the noughties, would bring people that have not been watching, you know, since John Cena was left, perhaps to bring them back in to see this big match. John Cena chasing that 17th world title, that that record-breaking against Roman Reigns, who's a very different Roman Reigns from their rivalry back in 2017. Cena owned Reigns on the mic back then. He wouldn't now. Roman Reigns, he needs acknowledging. He is the head of the table. It's almost now that Cena will be trying to take food off of that table. So it would be a fascinating rivalry to actually watch now. I think it's WrestleMania worthy. So that's how big that would be. If you could make Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar, that would be awesome. You know, names like Edge are probably going to come back for SummerSlam. Sasha Banks will be back in time for SummerSlam. They'll have their biggest card available, and if Cardi B is there as well, I imagine that, you know, it will bring a number of people there. Whether it brings 65,000, that's a big question mark, and I think a lot of that is down to people feeling comfortable, you know, that sort of pandemic sort of, you know, coming through to the other side of it. That's what I think is the big question mark. I don't think it's necessarily if people would go to a WWE show under the normal circumstances. Because as well, when we have these big four pay-per-views as well, usually, I mean, it's not just WrestleMania, people do come from overseas usually to these shows, and WWE, I imagine, still wouldn't have that option available at this current time. So it's a case of wait and see at this moment, but I think WWE will go all out to try and make sure that they'll get as close as possible to the biggest attendance they can have possible. Next question from Overminis from the Hard Hitting Wrestling Show. Will the Usos win the SmackDown Tag Team titles on SmackDown or at Hell in a Cell? Honestly, Ovi, I'm gonna say what I feel here. I think neither. I don't think they're winning the Tag Team Championships. I think the storyline development currently with the Usos and Roman Reigns is the best thing on WWE TV, and I'm absolutely loving the direction after SmackDown this week. Jimmy Uso, so happy, so positive, the idea that the Usos are back together doing what they do best as a tag team. Jey Uso, happy to be back in that tag team, but at the same time, he knows Roman Reigns isn't overly keen on this. You can see that awkward face he's got each and every time, you know, particularly when they were granted that tag team title match. You could see Roman's not going to be happy about this, and seeing Roman himself actually talking to Jey Uso and saying, look, when you were doing what I wanted you to do, you became main event Jey. You were always in the main event of SmackDown. You go to tag team with Jimmy once again, the Usos reunite. You're relegated to the opener, and that was just clever, simple, strategic booking from WWE this week on SmackDown, but it made so much sense, and it just made everything, you know, all the dots, you know, you just could join them up, and it was perfectly put together. This really is going in a good direction for next week on SmackDown, because will the Usos win those tag team championships, or is the head of the table going to have something to say, or is Jey Uso, who's promised Roman that he's on his side, have to make a decision here? I wouldn't be surprised if Jey Uso was to actually turn on Jimmy in the match. And I said for the longest time, I thought perhaps maybe we can get Roman versus Jimmy inside Hell in a Cell at the next pay-per-view. I've got a feeling we could get Jimmy versus Jey. I think that could be the direction that we could be going, because the Mysterios, they've not long had them tag team championships. It would seem a bit quick for that father and son duo to lose those belts. So I think that's why we're getting this match as well on SmackDown and not being saved for the pay-per-view. So I think that to Roman and the Usos, that's the storyline that's heading towards the pay-per-view, and I do feel that we could be, you know, I think Jey could actually turn on Jimmy here. Either that, or they, like you say, they do win the belts on SmackDown this week, and then it creates all further chaos because Jey's stuck in the middle, Roman's unhappy. You know, whatever happens, I think there's a no-lose situation, you put it that way, and I'm really looking forward to SmackDown this week. It's with ease the best storyline in wrestling right now. Wrestling by Waldridge with our next question now, and of course he joined me this week on the SCW Rewind Retro Review along with Jonesy Chats Wrestling. We did In Your House Bad Blood from 1997, combining the fact NXT bringing back In Your House as a pay-per-view, and of course it is the first of a Hell in a Cell match as well, Hell in a Cell being the pay-per-view also in June in WWE. Go and check out that retro review, it's available on the channel straight after this video. But going back then to Aaron's question for us this week, he asked, predicted match of the night for Double or Nothing. Great question. There's certainly a number of options there. Stadium Stampede 2, of course. I mean, it was the highlight of last year's Double or Nothing, in my personal opinion, with the match that really stood out, because I didn't really know what to expect with it, and I'm kind of the same. How can they top last year? So I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do with that. But looking for when we're actually in Daily's place in the ring, there are a number of matches that certainly could be big moments. I think the tag team match with John Moxley and Eddie Kingston against the Young Bucks has potential to be one of them. I really think think Britt Baker, if she does win the AEW Women's Championship, will be moment of the night, because I think so many people want it to happen. But the match I'm going to say to you as the predicted match of the night, because although it seems the most obvious answer of a prediction, Kenny Omega retaining the AEW Championship, I think the match against Puck, against Orange Cassidy, is going to be a match of the night candidate, and will be my predicted match of the night, because three fantastic workers. You've got the oddball character as well of Orange Cassidy that will throw a bit of a spanner in the works in places, which will be great fun to break the match up in places. Pac as well, with his sort of dark character that he's got, and of course Kenny Omega being so desperate to retain that championship in any way possible. I just hope that we don't get outside involvement from the Good Brothers, but maybe I'm asking too much here. But if this is allowed for these three to go at it just in a normal three-way match, we don't really see these in AEW, so I predict that will end up being the match of the night. The Broadcast Podcast, a fantastic podcast, by the way. I recommend everyone goes and checks them out. With three questions for us this week here on AskSCW. Who do you think is next for carrying across any NXT Championship? Thoughts on AEW on Friday night? Would a permanent move be better? And what classic WWE pay-per-view should they bring back? Personally, they would like to see the return of Cyber Sunday and Taboo Tuesday. I'd just say, yeah, because of course that was at one point a Tuesday pay-per-view and then it turned to the Sunday pay-per-view. I actually really agree with you, not to be samey here. I think that that would work so much better in the current environment. Social media just seems to work so much better now than when you had the classic, you had to go on WWE.com and just click on the button. And technically, WWE could still do what they wanted. I think with Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that, it would work so much better now. So that's definitely one pay-per-view I agree I would love to see come in. To give a couple of my own, just so I can give a bit of an original answer for it, for me, I would love to see Halloween Havoc actually move to the main roster. I know NXT did it last year, and it was the first time in over 20 years, but I think as an actual pay-per-view, I think it would work really well for WWE to have that in October. So for me, Halloween Havoc would be one. I'm a big fan of Starrcade as well. I just like the idea of tradition. I would make that the December pay-per-view each and every year rather than TLC. I'm not really a big fan of like the gimmick name pay-per-views that we have, so those would be the ones that I would sort of change and mix around. So for me, those would personally be ones. If I was to give one old school WWE one, I always like No Mercy, just purely because A, the video game, but B, because you know it has some great moments when you look through the years. Kurt Angle winning his first WWE Championship, and of course brought back in 2017, as we mentioned earlier in the video. Roman Reigns, John Cena was their match before, and I think also was Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman on that show back in 2017. So yeah, for me, No Mercy would be a fun one to bring back. As for who's next for carrying cross, we've got the triple threat this Tuesday, haven't we? Kyle O'Reilly, Pete Dunne, Johnny Gargano. This promises to be an epic triple threat match. I cannot wait to see it. I think Kyle O'Reilly though is going to pick up the W. I think that's the direction for In Your House. And I've said many times, I think previously, I think when they do that match, I think that's when Adam Cole makes his return and costs Kyle O'Reilly the match. So I think Kyle O'Reilly is the next one in line against Karrion Kross. And as for AEW on a Friday, I mean, for me personally, they've got the Rampage coming later this year, haven't they? So I think, for me, I like the idea of the Dynamite being on Wednesday, personally, because with Dynamite and SmackDown on the same evening, it feels a bit heavy. Rampage, I think, is going to be a 1 hour show, so for me, that feels a bit light, especially not being in the right time zone for when these shows are on. A lot of the time, I'm not staying up watching them in the middle of the night. I need to watch them the next day. So to know that I've got two 2 hour shows to watch the following day feels a bit heavy. I always felt that when we had NXT and Dynamite, so I'm happy Dynamite remains on Wednesday. Rampage coming in on a Friday should be fun, but I do think that, I know we've got Dynamite again this week, so I mean there's always a chance that perhaps I could be swayed depending on the way the shows are done, but I thought Dynamite did a good job this week as they go home pay-per-view. Like I said earlier in the video, I think the fans really heightened up the show as well, and they took the opportunity on this Dynamite to really, I suppose, put a bit more emphasis on some of the matches that didn't have as much build going into the pay-per-view, and giving just small touches as well to the big matches as well. Of course, Stadium Stampede 2, it was good to see they had a bit of a brawl on the field already. So yeah, I think Dynamite did a good job this week, but I would like it to remain on Wednesdays full time. Lorenzo Carrillo, our next questions now. Is WWE setting up Shinsuke Nakamura for a push now that he has got the guitarist mouthpiece Rick Boogs? And can Nick Khan change the direction of the overall landscape that WWE is today? Well, Nick Khan seems to be getting a lot of power very, very quickly. He's not been with the company that long, has he? But of course, he's now involved with international offices as well. I know WWE fired a lot of people, and Nick Khan has taken over a lot of those roles. He was the spearhead at negotiating the deal, which led to the zombie stuff that happened at WrestleMania Backlash. He's increased a lot of revenues in a quick time as well, and I imagine he's got a lot to do with the outside influences, perhaps people like Bad Bunny as well coming into WWE. So there seems to be good and bad with what's going on, but with Nick Khan, certainly money is going up, it feels right now, for WWE. They're certainly profiting from what he's doing so far. I imagine that definitely probably will get more changes as we go along. I always do fear when someone has that much control and that much decision, but let's see how it plays out. I mean, for me at the moment, I can't say I have too much to say on this. Like I say, zombie stuff, I mean, I've said previously I really was negative against that, but it brought a lot of money in for WWE, so if it can get them good deals and gets them good money, I mean, would you do it for $1 million? That's, I suppose, the question you have to ask yourself. And with other stuff as well, bringing like people like Bad Bunny, maybe like we said, the rumours of Cardi B and stuff like that, that will only help the product. It's something that the product needs to help it grow, keep casual fans invested. It's not just catering to what hardcore fans want. It's doing stuff as well that's going to bring outsiders to come in and check out the product, and that's what will help ultimately, you know, streams, ratings, whatever. Those things then will naturally grow over time. As for Shinsuke Nakamura, and of course now with his partnership with Rick Boogs, I am actually enjoying the partnership. Poor Elias, by the way, his gimmick has been completely stolen, and it's a lot more popular on SmackDown. But no, I'm liking it. Shinsuke seems like he's got an edge, he's got a bit of charisma, he's got a bit of something back with him once again for the first time in a long time. I'm really enjoying the storyline with him and King Corbin. Believe it or not, that's one of my favourite storylines currently in WWE. Would you believe me saying that? But yeah, I'm enjoying the way it's going. I do feel a bit sorry for Corbin, actually. Said his crown stolen, but I like this King of Strong style, and I like the way Shin's got, he's kind of got his mojo back, as I say, and with the ideas I said earlier in the video, also with the potential idea if there was a partnership with WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling, which I'm sure, due to the last question I just said, that I'm sure Nick Khan is heavily involved in trying to make happen as well. He will have a lot of the negotiation tactics going into it, I would imagine, especially when you look at things now, just very quickly, I'm kind of now combining both questions into one here. You look at the Forbidden Door stuff right now, I suppose it's probably not benefiting AEW, New Japan much more, especially working with Impact at this point. Impact's probably the one that's gaining the most, probably from viewership when you look at the last pay-per-view anyway, but as a company, they're probably being the most buried by the other two as well. So I don't know really from that, but Nick Khan will probably look and see how things are working from that side of things, how it's working from a financial aspect, and saying, look, this is how it would benefit you from a WWE perspective if you were partnered up with us. And imagine, you know, if New Japan as well can have people going back like Shinsuke Nakamura, AJ Styles, Finn Balor, people have been there before, and will probably get that big pop going back too as well. So they have a lot of tricks up the sleeve that I think could make that work, and a push right now for Shinsuke Nakamura could be a sign of things that would say, look, it's good to send your top Japanese talent here, we're going to book them well. So yeah, perhaps Shinsuke is in line for a push. We'll have to see how it's going to develop over the next weeks and months in WWE. As we always know, plans can always change. And last question this week then come from BCC WrestlePod. Do you think Moose will take the Impact title from Kenny Omega? If not, who do you think will dethrone the belt collector down the road? A great question, very popular question as well right now of what's going to happen with Kenny Omega as the Impact World Champion, especially with Moose, his current contract situation as well. No sign of if he's re-signed with the company or not at this point, or if Moose will go into a different direction. For that reason, for me, Moose is not winning the Impact World Championship. It seems too soon for the belt collector to be dropping that championship at any time soon. I would say even Slammiversary, even though that would be the feel-good moment for Impact Wrestling to get the belt back there, I think it's going to be more likely Bound for Glory. So I think we're looking towards the end of the calendar year. I think it depends who comes in next for Impact Wrestling. If they get Samoa Joe back, that would be my prediction. If it's not Samoa Joe, then perhaps they do a long-term storyline to get it to Sami Callihan, because I like the direction of what they're doing with Callihan and Kenny Omega right now. I think that's a really fun dynamic, because Sami Callihan almost has kind of got that, he's been that sort of, you know, he's the Death Machine, that heel kind of rebellious nature, but that rebellion can go into a top babyface as well. You've seen the likes of Stone Cold in WWE, CM Punk do it as well. If they do that with Sami Callihan, they could really sort of make a top babyface, rebellious babyface in Sami Callihan to get the championship back, to really get that back to Impact Wrestling and push the company going forward. Whoever is going to beat Kenny Omega for that championship will really get a rub from doing so as well. So it's interesting to see who will be the person to do so. If I had to predict though right now, I still think Samoa Joe would be, because it would be the person that's sort of coming back, the TNA original if you want, coming back, seeing what's happened while he's been away and wants to rescue the company instead of seeing the world champion actually being representative from a different company. But that's all for me this week anyway. Thank you for watching Ask SCW. As always, if you want to be involved in the next Q&A, then all you've got to do is drop a comment in the comment section here with hashtag AskSCW, and I will give you a shout out in the next episode. As well as that, also, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all should be coming up on your screen right about now. As well as that as well, you can check out my AEW Double or Nothing predictions. If you're watching this after that, then the review is coming live on Monday. I'll be joined by Jonesy Chats Wrestling as well, and Jonesy was with me for the retro review SCW Rewind, as along with Wrestling by Waldridge. We did In Your House Bad Blood from 1997, of course the first ever Hell in a Cell match, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, and Kane also debuted on the show. But that's all for me anyway. Please like, share and subscribe, hit the notification bell as well to all, so you know each and every time a video is released on the channel. Please leave a comment in the comment section. I look forward to interacting with you on any of the topics that we talked about in today's video. Have yourselves a great day, enjoy Double or Nothing this evening, and I'll see you next time here on SCW. Take care, have yourselves a good one.